Hi everyone, and today we are going to talk about OWASP model. So I'm Bushra and I'm going to be talking about OWASP model, and my audience is Suzanne and Kanaya. So we're not directly going to jump into this OWASP topic because it's going to be very boring. So what I want to do is I want you to start thinking about it. So just imagine it's a beautiful day and you're walking on the beach, and out of nowhere you get stung by a blue octopus. It's a very venomous octopus, and you were not prepared mentally, or you were not carrying any security or first aid safety items with you, because you were simply not expecting that it's going to happen. Out of nowhere you're just walking and you got attacked. So when we are thinking about security, we need to put ourselves in that scenario to get us start thinking. So similar to that scenario, this is the real life example. So if you are not taking proper measures, if you're not implementing security in your system or network or your web application or any software, you can get attacked because you would be vulnerable simply because you were not prepared or you were not expecting any of those. So what OWASP is? OWASP is an Open Web Application Security Project. It's a worldwide charitable, non-profitable organization in which all the security personnel work together in an individual platform to improve security of the software. It's basically an online community that gives us free tools and methodology to deal with security flaws. Now, what does it include? So, OWASP risk and threat model includes application overview, application decomposition, identifying threats, identifying vulnerabilities, and propose their solution of the threats or vulnerabilities. So basically, it's a systematic and structured security technique to identify threats and to propose a solution for it, and securing your network or web application. So the very first stage of decomposing of OS model is application decomposition. So if you could see in our project that we have attached two models of application decomposition. One is basically just an overview. It's a simpler model. If you understand that model, you can actually understand most of the applications that are in the market nowadays, and how does that work and the mechanism of it. And the other model is Afterpay's actual model that we have got it from Afterpay developers website. It's actual real Afterpay model. So what we are going to do, we are going to talk about application decomposition, simpler model. So just imagine it's when you tap the card or when you use a card online. So there are two scenarios. When you tap your card, either it's going to get approved or it's going to get declined. So it's not as easy as you think. It's not that straightforward. So there are certain checkpoints that when you use your card online or when you use your card at the merchant's FPOS machine, there are certain checkpoints that it has to pass. So if you look at our application decomposition simple model closely, you would see that we have used different colors to separate each checkpoint. So when you use your card to online transaction or at merchant's FPOS, the user simply insert the card or use the card details online and enters the password. Then it will redirect it to user's database. It will look up for the users first, and then it will redirect it to the user's database. And from the database, it's going to check if you have entered the right password or the incorrect password. If the password is right, good on you. But if the password is incorrect, then you will have to try again. And even though after entering your password, is going to look up for the user and going to check the user database if the password is correct. So there are things going on in the background. So you need a HTTPS connection, so secure HTTP connection, and then you need a database for the user, and then you need a Wi-Fi connection, and only then, if everything is, it's all synchronized together. So if every checkpoint is successfully completed, only then the transaction will be processed and it would be approved. So in our group project, we have talked about Afterpay business. So what are the vulnerabilities, what can go wrong, how they have designed their application. And for the presentation of this Afterpay group work, my audience would be Susan and Kanaya. Because Afterpay uses this basic API authentication, it is vulnerable to certain sort of attacks. One of the famous one is man-in-the-middle, CSRF attack, SQL injections, and distribution denial of service, which are the very common ones. We have already discussed about those in our project, and what could be the solutions and how we can prevent them. So there are 5 steps for threat modeling. Number 1 is application overview or objective of security. Then application decomposition. Then we have to identify threats and identify vulnerabilities and propose a solution and take measures for prevention from threats. So similarly in Afterpay's application decomposition model as well, what happens is when the user uses their card online or by merchant, most of the time online because it's an online web application, as I mentioned before, it helps you paying your total amount of purchase in installments. It does not charge you anything. What they do, they charge merchant, and if you fail to pay any of your installment payments, then there's a late fee. And we are going to talk about the vulnerabilities later on and the threats associated with it. But for now, in the application decomposition model of Afterpay, as you can see, there's a merchant server. So what happens is when the user tries to use the card to purchase something, it attaches merchant ID with the user's request and then redirect it to the user's database, user lookup, and then user database to check if the password is incorrect or not. If the password is incorrect, it will return you and ask you to re-enter the password again and again, same thing. Then it's going to take you towards a HTTPS connection. You need a Wi-Fi connection. It will do the user lookup and then check the database again. If the password is correct, then good on you. The transaction would be processed and you will be able to purchase whatever you would like to purchase. But when it comes to threats and vulnerabilities of Afterpay, so it kind of gets very scary because Afterpay doesn't do credit checks before letting you set up an account. So there's a catch there. So what happened is when you set up an account with Afterpay, they would let you set it up straight away in most occasions. Now, how they're making so much money? Well, they charge merchant fee for every purchase. So there's a certain percentage of fee that every transaction is processed via Afterpay platform. The merchant has to pay Afterpay the fee. So okay, merchants are getting the sales are increasing, fine. Users are getting benefits of paying the same amount in installments. It's good too. But the problem here is many vulnerable young generations, young kids, they don't understand. So what they're doing, they're spending money more than the power of their expenditure. So what they're doing is, for example, if they know that they have only $100 to spend, so what they would do, they would spend $400. So because they know that okay, $100 every 2 weeks they have to pay installments, and that's ending up in big trouble because Australian owes around $903 million for Afterpay payments. Now it's getting dirty here as well because every single time someone misses any payments, they have to pay a late fee. So it's like increasing the debt, and increases the late fee, and they are doing mismanagement of money. They're getting one more thing about Afterpay, because when you miss your payments and when Afterpay's algorithm detects any negative activity in your account, they are legally they can legally expose all your negative activity in your credit card into the credit card bureaus, and from that it can end up leaking in black market, and there's so many things that can happen to your card and to your details. So that's the very first thing that we need to be able to protect. So the proposed solution for this is, they have mentioned that don't use the credit card, try to use a debit card or a savings account card, because if you're going to use credit card, you get credit from the bank, but in the savings account you will have your own money, and then obviously there are certain things that you can do. You can transfer it into the daily accounts or something like that to protect your money, even though if they leak it out. The second thing is, when it comes to technical issues, Afterpay uses only basic authentication, which is vulnerable which is vulnerable to a lot of attacks. So what are the impacts of Afterpay in our young generation and the government and enterprises? Well, we have seen in the recent reports, as per Australian Securities and Investment Commission, that Australian consumer market owes about $903 million, and that has to be paid for Afterpay, because the vulnerable and young people, they're spending more than what they can actually afford, and it's ending up in big trouble. Also because there's another one, Afterpay mystery algorithm inconvenience. So for some reason, people have complained that they are restricted to place orders using Afterpay's platform. So similar to Afterpay, other credit card giants like Visa is planning to enter the Afterpay market as well. Now the problem again here is, even though studies have revealed that 76% of the consumer pay their after payments on time, but still 24%, which is a very big proportion of the consumer market, are not being able to pay their after payments on time. So the threats associated with Afterpay web application are malware, spoofing, and the vulnerabilities are two-factor authentication, man-in-the-middle attack, and even the basic authentications, because they're just using a basic authentication which uses standard HTTPS fields without handshake requirement. And obviously it has a major impact on our young generation. Their credit history can be leaked in black market. Disappointment of rejection that they can't set up a standard Afterpay account on the Afterpay platform because of some unknown rejection. Sometimes people refer to mystery algorithm. Afterpay also tricks a regulation. It's like, because Afterpay offers credit at the point of sales, which protects consumer and finance industry and ethics, but on the other hand, because it should comply with PCI DSS standards, likewise any credit card companies, which has consumer protection legislation, which means the faulty good can be returned. But again, with Afterpay, if you have trouble with any faulty goods that you have received, you need to contact the merchant directly rather than Afterpay platform. So it's kind of it's disappointing, and it kind of get very tricky and complicated as well. So what's the future opportunity for Afterpay? When it comes to the future linked with Afterpay, my personal opinion is it's actually it's very flexible platform that you can pay installments, but again, on the other side, it has a high risk. If that can be secured, yes, it's a very good platform, but unless there are solutions to those vulnerabilities and threats, I think I would refrain personally to use Afterpay.